In early 2025, a sudden and sweeping Canadian boycott sent shockwaves through the U.S. alcohol industry, bringing it to its knees almost overnight. What began as a grassroots movement quickly escalated into a nationwide phenomenon, with Canadian consumers and businesses uniting in an unprecedented show of economic force. Jack Daniel's, once a staple on Canadian shelves and a symbol of cross-border camaraderie, disappeared almost instantly. This wasn't due to supply chain disruptions or logistical issues, but rather a powerful consumer and political revolt that swept across the country. The spark that ignited this movement? A combination of newly imposed U.S. tariffs and inflammatory rhetoric from President Trump, which many Canadians saw as a direct affront to their national dignity and economic sovereignty. Canadians, typically known for their politeness and restraint, decided to fight back in the most effective way they could, by hitting American companies where it hurt the most, their wallets. Everyday shoppers made conscious choices to leave American whiskey on the shelves. What started as individual acts of protest soon became a coordinated national effort. Grassroots actions swept the country, with volunteers spreading the word and provincial liquor boards moving quickly to formalize the boycott, making it official policy in many regions. Major markets like Ontario and Quebec led the charge, pulling American products from their shelves and sending shockwaves through U.S. boardrooms. The message was unmistakable. Canada would not be taken for granted. The sight of empty shelves, once filled with familiar American brands, became a powerful symbol of fractured relations and a new era of consumer activism. For decades, American liquor companies had enjoyed a privileged place in Canadian stores, often assuming their products would always be welcome north of the border. The boycott shattered that illusion, proving that national pride and the collective power of consumers could inflict more damage than any government-imposed tariff or trade barrier ever could. The message from Canada was clear and unmistakable. Respect is not optional. The cost of ignoring it would be counted not just in lost sales, but in billions of dollars, and a lasting shift in cross-border relations. The numbers were brutal. In the first half of 2025, U.S. alcohol exports to Canada plunged by 60%. Jack Daniel's and Maker's Mark disappeared from shelves, and the Liquor Control Board of Ontario saw U.S. sales evaporate. California wineries lost $173 million in just 6 months. Smaller producers like Sagamore Spirit saw their Canadian sales vanish overnight. The Distilled Spirits Council called the impact devastating. But while American brands suffered, Canadian distilleries thrived. Domestic alcohol sales in Ontario surged 14%. Brands like Barnburner Whiskey and Cavey Reserve seized the moment, gaining market share and visibility. The boycott, while punishing the U.S., became a windfall for Canada's own spirits industry. This was a story of people, not politicians. It was a movement that started in the aisles of everyday stores, in the hands of ordinary Canadians making simple choices that would soon echo across the country. The boycott began as a direct response to U.S. tariffs and President Trump's dismissive comments, igniting a wave of national pride and unity. Canadians from coast to coast felt a renewed sense of identity, determined to stand together in the face of what many saw as unfair treatment. Canadians stopped buying American spirits as a quiet but powerful protest. Each purchase became a statement, a way to show support for their own country's producers and values. Social media buzzed with calls to buy local, and liquor store staff reported a surge in demand for Canadian alternatives. Hashtags like #BuyLocal and #DrinkCanadian trended as people shared photos and stories of their choices, inspiring others to join in. Provincial liquor boards followed the public's lead, removing U.S. products and redrawing the North American alcohol map. The shift was visible on store shelves, where Canadian brands took center stage and American bottles disappeared. U.S. trade groups pleaded for a return to normal, but their words fell flat. The momentum was too strong and the message from Canadian consumers was unmistakable. Some loyalists quietly stockpiled their favorite American brands, unwilling to give them up. But the overwhelming trend was clear. Canadians were drinking Canadian, and the consumer revolt had become an economic force, reshaping the marketplace and sending a message that could not be ignored. As the crisis reached its boiling point, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney made a move that surprised both critics and allies. In a political climate charged with tension and uncertainty, Carney's decision would soon send shockwaves through the international community. On August 27, he announced that Canada would unilaterally lift all retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, including high-profile products like American whiskey and bourbon. This bold step was not just about trade, it was about sending a message to both domestic and international audiences. This wasn't surrender, it was a calculated strategic pivot designed to change the narrative. Carney and his advisors knew that simply holding the line would not break the deadlock. By reframing the conflict, Carney positioned Canada as the reasonable, forward-thinking actor on the world stage, shifting the spotlight and the pressure back onto Washington to respond. The move, quickly dubbed the Carney Gambit, was designed to de-escalate the trade war, restore stability, and open the door for a new round of negotiations. It was a high-stakes play that risked political backlash at home. It also put provincial liquor boards in a tough spot. Now that federal tariffs were gone, their continued bans on U.S. alcohol imports looked less like national policy and more like local protectionism, forcing them to reconsider their stance. Carney's gamble was clear. By taking the initiative, Canada had demonstrated its strength and resolve. Now, with the world watching, it was time for Canada to lead the conversation on the future of North American trade. Carney's announcement didn't restock shelves. Provincial liquor boards in Ontario and Quebec refused to lift their bans on U.S. alcohol, keeping American brands locked out. The boycott, once a national movement, became a provincial standoff. Local distilleries were thriving, and premiers were reluctant to give up their new advantage. The division of powers in Canada meant federal decisions didn't guarantee immediate change. For U.S. distillers, the removal of tariffs was meaningless if their products remained barred. The industry was caught between a federal government seeking peace and provinces still waging economic war. The path back to Canadian shelves was now more complicated than ever. As 2025 ends, the future of the North American spirits market is uncertain. Even if provincial bans lift, Canadian consumers have embraced local brands. American distillers face a long, expensive road to win back trust and shelf space. The Carney Gambit has shifted the trade landscape, giving Canada new leverage in negotiations. The alcohol dispute is now a case study in the power of consumer action and targeted economic pain. For U.S. exporters, the lesson is clear: trade policy and public sentiment are inseparable. The question isn't just when Jack Daniel's will return, but whether it can ever reclaim its former throne.